The Grand Convergence Hall floated above the blue clouds of the planet Aurelian, like a jewel held by invisible hands. Delegates from hundreds of star systems gathered inside, their shapes and colors filling the wide chamber with quiet movement and soft light. This place was meant for calm talks, slow words, and careful promises. No one expected shouting, especially not from an alien noblewoman. Elias Ward stood near the human delegation platform, hands folded behind his back, trying very hard not to look bored. He was an ambassador, but not an important one. Humans were still considered newcomers, interesting but not dangerous, clever but simple. Elias had learned that standing quietly and listening was the safest way to survive galactic politics. Lady Giravel of House Thrix stood across the hall, tall and elegant, her silver-blue skin marked with glowing patterns that showed her noble rank. Her species valued control, planning, and perfect bloodlines. Every word spoken by a Thrix noble was usually measured and cold. That was why everyone froze when she suddenly pointed at Elias. "You?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the hall.
"Human male, you are the father of my grandchild."
The chamber fell into absolute silence. Elias blinked once, then twice. For a moment, he honestly thought the translator had malfunctioned. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, speaking into the air. "There must be a mistake." The other delegates began whispering. Screens flickered as assistants checked data. A few beings leaned forward, curious. Others leaned back, alarmed. Lady Giravel stepped forward, her glowing markings flashing brighter. "There is no mistake. The genetic confirmation has been repeated 7 times. Your biological signature is present in the unborn child of my daughter." Elias felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His heart beat faster, but his face stayed calm. Years of human diplomacy had trained him well. "I have never met your daughter," he said. "I have never even visited your home system. That is what makes this unforgivable," Giravel replied sharply. The presiding counselor, a massive floating being of light and crystal, pulsed gently. "Lady Giravel, please explain how this situation could occur." She drew herself taller. "Our people do not reproduce through chance like humans do. We plan bloodlines across generations. Genetic material is selected, refined, and placed into the future through probabilistic seeding. This human's DNA should never have been compatible. Yet it is there. There." Elias frowned. "Probabilistic?
Seeding?
It means," the counselor translated patiently, "that their species can influence future offspring without direct contact." A ripple of surprise moved through the human delegation.
Elias swallowed.
"So you're saying," he said carefully, "that my DNA somehow ended up in your system without me knowing?" "Yes," Lady Giravel snapped. "And that is unacceptable." Elias opened his mouth and closed it again. He ran through his memories, medical scans, diplomatic health checks, routine genetic sampling required by galactic law. Humans always complied. They had to. "I've given genetic samples for research," he said, with consent forms longer than my arm. Lady Giravel's eyes narrowed. "Those samples were never meant to interfere with noble lineages." "Neither was I," Elias replied quietly. The room grew tense, not angry tense, curious tense, the kind that made entire civilizations lean closer. A group of alien scientists stepped forward, projecting glowing models of DNA strands into the air. The shapes twisted and shifted, some smooth and orderly, others wild and branching. "This is Thrix genetic structure," one scientist explained. "Stable, predictable, designed to follow probability paths." Another model appeared beside it, messier, full of sudden turns and strange loops. "And this," the scientist continued, "is human DNA." Several delegates murmured. One even laughed softly. "So chaotic," someone whispered. Lady Giravel did not laugh. That chaos has infected my bloodline. Elias felt a strange mix of embarrassment and something else. Pride, maybe. Humans had heard this word before. Chaotic. Unpredictable.
Difficult.
But if your systems are so controlled, Elias asked, how did this happen? The scientists exchanged uneasy glances. We do not know, one admitted. Human genetics behave differently when exposed to probabilistic fields. Instead of aligning, they adapt. The word hung in the air.
Adapt?
The counselor pulsed brighter. Are you suggesting that human DNA actively responded to your future planning system?
Yes, the scientist said. It did not follow the path.
It changed the path. Elias let out a slow breath. That sounded very human. Lady Jaravel's voice dropped, cold and sharp.
Because of this, my unborn grandchild cannot be fully predicted. That alone is a scandal.
Elias looked at her. For the first time, he saw fear beneath her anger.
What happens now?
He asked. The council must decide, she said. Your existence has disrupted noble certainty. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Humans disrupting certainty was not something the galaxy liked to hear. A representative from a long-lived species spoke up. Could the human be removed from the equation? Elias stiffened, but no weapons appeared. No guards moved. This was not a threat. It was worse. It was a suggestion. The human lead ambassador stepped forward. Humans do not consent to punishment for events beyond intent or control. Lady Jaravel's eyes returned to Elias. Intent is irrelevant. Consequence is everything. The counselor raised a luminous limb.
No decision will be made today.
Further study is required. Reluctant agreement spread through the hall. Lady Jaravel turned away, then paused. Human, she said without looking back. Until this matter is resolved, you will remain under observation. Elias nodded. I've been under observation my whole career. That earned a few quiet chuckles. As the session ended, Elias found himself standing alone, staring at the fading genetic models. Chaos, they had called it, a flaw, a disruption, but humans knew better. Chaos was how they survived, how they changed, how they kept going when plans failed. Somewhere in the future, a child was growing who carried that same chaos, and the galaxy had no idea what to do with it. Neither, Elias realized, did he. And that was only the beginning. Elias Ward had been placed in a guest residence that was far too polite to be called a holding area. The room floated near the outer ring of the station, surrounded by transparent walls that showed the endless stars. Soft light followed him as he moved, adjusting to his mood, though Elias suspected it was also recording every breath he took. Observation, Lady Jaravel had said. He sat on a curved seat and rubbed his hands together. Humans were good at waiting, but they were not good at not knowing why they were waiting. Across the station, in a sealed research chamber, the alien scientists worked without rest. Data streams flowed like rivers of light. Genetic patterns shifted, split, and reformed again and again. Every test gave the same result. Human DNA did not obey. One scientist, a tall being with translucent skin, leaned back in disbelief. We adjust probability by fractions smaller than thought, yet the human sequence resists alignment. Another replied quietly, It does not resist, it adapts. That word again. Lady Jaravel stood at the edge of the chamber, her hands clasped behind her back. Her noble markings glowed faintly, reacting to her rising stress. She had ruled estates, negotiated bloodlines, and planned futures before stars were named. Nothing in her long life had prepared her for this. My people have never failed to predict an heir, she said. Never. The lead scientist hesitated. Your ladyship. Perhaps prediction itself is the problem. She turned, slowly.
Explain. The Thrick system assumes the future is a straight path, the scientist said. Human genetics behave as if the future is flexible. Lady Giravel's eyes narrowed.
The future is not flexible. For humans, the scientist replied, it may be. Meanwhile, Elias was not allowed to leave the residence, but he was allowed visitors. The human ambassador, Mara Chen, arrived carrying a tablet full of reports and a face full of concern. You're trending on 6 diplomatic channels, she said, sitting across from him. Most of them are confused, a few are terrified. Elias gave a weak smile. Good. Confusion means they haven't decided I'm dangerous yet. Mara sighed. Elias, they're scanning every genetic record you've ever had. I know, he said. I consented to them. That consent didn't include becoming a noble bloodline problem. Elias leaned back, staring at the stars. I didn't choose this. No, Mara said softly, but humanity is about to be judged by it. Across the station, Lady Giravel met with the council in private. The massive crystalline being pulsed gently as data flowed around them.
The child's development is accelerating, the counselor said. Neural patterns are forming early. That is impossible, Giravel said.
It was, the counselor replied, until now. A projection appeared, showing the unborn child's genetic structure. It was unlike anything recorded before. Thrick's stability intertwined with human variability, forming something new.
The child is not unstable, the counselor continued.
It is. Adaptable. Lady Giravel felt a chill she did not want to admit to. Adaptable meant uncontrollable. Remove the human influence, she said. Seal the genetic interaction. The scientists exchanged looks again. We attempted that, one said carefully. The child's development weakened. Silence filled the chamber. We restored exposure, the scientist continued. Development stabilized. Lady Giravel's fingers tightened.
You are saying the human is required?
Yes, the scientist said. Not physically. Genetically, conceptually. She did not like that word. Conceptually. Back in the residence, Elias was suddenly flooded with alerts. The air shimmered as a communication channel opened. Lady Giravel appeared before him, her image sharp and controlled. Human, she said. You will answer my questions. Elias straightened. I'll try. Your species does not plan generations ahead, she said. How do you ensure survival? Elias blinked. We don't ensure it, he said honestly. We respond to problems when they happen. That is inefficient. Maybe, Elias said, but it works. Her eyes studied him not as an enemy now, but as a puzzle. You accept uncertainty, she said. We live in it, Elias replied. The connection ended without warning. Elsewhere, whispers spread through noble houses. If one human could disrupt a lineage, what could many do? Some houses quietly began reviewing old genetic data, searching for human traces they had ignored. Others began to worry. A Thrick's noble whispered to another, if humans cannot be predicted, they cannot be controlled. That makes them dangerous, the other replied. Or valuable, the first countered. Days passed. Elias was questioned by scientists, diplomats, even philosophers from species that had not spoken to humans before. He answered honestly every time. Humans failed. Humans adapted. Humans survived. One scientist finally asked, Are humans afraid of the future? Elias thought for a moment. Yes, he said. That's why we keep changing it. Lady Giravel watched these sessions from afar. Slowly, something uncomfortable formed in her mind. The human was not reckless. He was not malicious. He was not even special by human standards, and yet his existence alone had altered destiny. The unborn child responded to his genetic presence, like a plant leaning toward light. Neural growth synchronized, probability curves flattened into something unreadable. Not broken. Unreadable. At the next council meeting, Lady Zyraville stood once more before the galaxy. Her voice was calm, but the room felt heavier than before. "The problem is not the human," she said. "The problem is our belief that the future must obey us," gasps echoed. She continued, "My grandchild will not be bound by perfect prediction, and perhaps that is not a flaw." Eyes turned toward the human delegation. Elias felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. Not blame this time. Expectation. The counselor pulsed brightly. "Further integration studies are approved." Lady Zyraville added quietly, "The human will remain involved." Elias swallowed. The galaxy had spent centuries shaping the future. Now it was learning to live with someone who could change it just by existing. And this time, there would be no going back. The station changed after the council's decision. It was subtle at first. Elias noticed it in the way doors opened a little faster for him, in the way attendants paused before speaking, as if choosing their words more carefully. Observation had slowly turned into attention. He did not like the difference. Humans were used to being watched. They were not used to being needed. Elias was escorted to a new wing of the station, this one filled with research chambers and long observation halls. Transparent walls showed scientists at work, their tools humming softly as they studied streams of data that never seemed to settle. "Don't worry," Mara Chen said beside him. "This is still voluntary. That's what makes it worse," Elias replied. Inside the main chamber, Lady Zyraville waited. She stood alone, her noble markings dimmer than before. When she turned toward Elias, her expression was not angry. It was tired. "The child's growth has reached another threshold," she said. "And again, it does not match any projection." Elias nodded. "That seems to be a pattern." "Yes," she said, "a troubling one." The scientists activated a projection between them. A complex web of glowing lines appeared, shifting slowly like a living thing. Elias recognized parts of it from earlier sessions. "That's the probability map," he said.
"Yes," a scientist replied, "or what remains of it." The lines twisted, then smoothed, then branched again, refusing to stay fixed. "When we remove human influence," the scientist continued, "the system collapses into instability. When we restore it, the system finds balance." Elias frowned. "So I'm balancing your future?" "In a manner of speaking," the scientist said carefully. Lady Zyraville folded her arms. "You are a variable that does not settle." Elias smiled faintly. "That's the nicest thing anyone said about humans this week." She did not return the smile, but her eyes softened slightly. The council ordered extended studies. Elias became a regular presence in the research wing. He did not touch machines or adjust settings. He simply existed nearby, while systems measured the effect, and the effect was impossible to ignore. Whenever Elias entered the chamber, probability curves flattened, data and noise reduced. Predictions did not become clearer, but outcomes stabilized. "It's like the system stops panicking," one scientist whispered. Humans, Elias thought, were good at panic. Maybe that was why they learned how to move through it. Word spread quickly. Other noble houses sent observers. Some came out of curiosity. Others came out of fear. A few came with quiet hope. A representative from House Valari approached Elias after one session. Her species had skin like polished stone and eyes that reflected light sharply. "You do not try to control the future," she said. "No," Elias replied. "We try to survive it."
She considered this. Would you consider visiting our lineage chambers? Mara immediately stepped in. We are not offering human services. I am not asking for services, the Volari noble said. I am asking for presence. That request alone sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels. Lady Giravel watched all of this with mixed feelings. Her anger had faded, replaced by something more dangerous to her pride: understanding. She began reviewing human history in detail. Not the polished summaries, but the raw records. Failed colonies, broken treaties, near-extinction events, and always adaptation. Humans did not win because they were strong or advanced. They won because they adjusted faster than reality could trap them. One night, Lady Giravel requested a private conversation with Elias. They met in a quiet observation room overlooking the planet below. Storms moved slowly across its surface, beautiful and uncontrolled. My people believe perfection lies in certainty, she said. And mine believes certainty is an illusion, Elias replied. She nodded slowly. Your presence forces systems to accept uncertainty. Or work with it, Elias said. She turned toward him. You are not unique among your kind. No, he said. That's the scary part. At the same time, resistance grew. Some council members argued that relying on humans weakened galactic order. Others claimed that human unpredictability would eventually break noble systems. A formal objection was raised. The human represents a structural risk, one delegate stated. A future that cannot be predicted, cannot be trusted. Mara responded calmly. Humans have lived in unpredictable futures since before we left our home planet. That is not reassuring, the delegate replied. Surviving rarely is, Mara said. During another session, the unborn child's neural activity spiked. Alarms sounded, not of danger, but of rapid development. Patterns formed that no database could identify. The lead scientist looked stunned. The child is beginning to anticipate outcomes. Lady Giravel stiffened. That is not possible. It should not be, the scientist agreed. But human genetic influence appears to encourage flexible foresight. Elias felt a strange tightening in his chest. You mean intuition? The scientist paused. Yes, that word fits. For the first time, Lady Giravel's voice shook. What will my grandchild become? Elias answered softly. Someone who can walk paths others can't see yet. Silence followed. The council convened again. This time, the tone was different, less accusation. More caution. The human cannot be removed, the counselor declared. Doing so causes measurable harm. A murmur spread. Then what is the solution? Another delegate asked. Lady Giravel closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her decision was clear. The solution, she said, is to redefine the role of the human. All eyes turned to her. He is not a contaminant, she continued. He is an anchor, a stabilizing uncertainty. The phrase echoed through the chamber. Elias straightened. I didn't apply for that job. You never do, she replied. That is why it works. The council approved a new classification. Elias Ward was no longer just an ambassador. He was designated as an external lineage stabilizer, a role created solely because of him. The title meant little to Elias. The responsibility did not. As the session ended, Mara looked at him with a mix of pride and worry. You just changed galactic biology. Elias exhaled. I was hoping for a quiet posting. Far below, on a world shaped by storms and chance, a child continued to grow, balanced between certainty and chaos, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand that humans were not a mistake in the system. They were the reason the system could survive at all. Part 4. 1,600 words kaleko, or interesting hunachea, or third-person style malek niha, or simple basic English ka, or violated free honache, without short heading. Sure. Hi, here is Part 4, continuing naturally from Part 3. It is written in simple basic English. Third person, violence-free, no headings, and focused on high tension, emotional weight, and the only solution moment, keeping the story engaging throughout. The title given to Elias Ward spread through the station faster than any official announcement. External lineage stabilizer. Some translated it as anchor. Others called it a shield. A few whispered a more troubling word. Necessary. Elias tried not to think about it as he walked through the observation halls. The walls showed moving data, glowing softly, as if the future itself was breathing. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, not with hostility, with calculation. That made him uncomfortable. Lady Giravel felt something similar, though she would never admit it aloud. Her entire life had been built on certainty, on knowing what came next. Now, every step forward felt like stepping onto ground that might move. The council ordered the final review. This was not unusual for major decisions, but this time, the scale was different. Representatives from dozens of noble houses attended. Some appeared in person. Others projected themselves from light years away. The chamber was full in a way Elias had never seen before. This was no longer about one child. It was about the future. The lead scientist began the presentation. We have reached the limit of observation without action. A complex projection appeared, showing branching paths of probability. Most paths blurred into static beyond a certain point. Our models fail beyond this stage, the scientist continued. The child's development is approaching emergence. When that happens, lineage effects will ripple outward, a delegate interrupted. Define ripple. Uncertainty spreading into other predictive systems, the scientist replied. Not destruction, influence. Murmurs filled the chamber. Lady Giravel stepped forward. My house accepts this risk. That drew sharp attention. She continued, her voice steady. But the child cannot emerge without stability. And stability requires the human. Elias felt his name before he heard it. He must be bound to the lineage, she said. Silence fell like a held breath. The counselor pulsed slowly. Define bound. Lady Giravel turned to face Elias fully. Not as a mate. Not as a servant. As a role. Elias raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. She took a deep breath. It was a very human gesture, and she did not like that she had learned it from watching him. Our noble systems are rigid, she said. They break when bent too far. Humans bend naturally. Therefore, the only solution is to place a human where bending is required. Gasps echoed. You propose rewriting noble law, a delegate said. Yes, Lady Giravel replied. I propose survival. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Some argued this would weaken noble authority. Others warned of human influence spreading too far. A few, very quietly, asked how soon they could apply the same solution. Elias stood still through it all. He felt strangely calm. Humans had always lived in systems not built for them. This was just a bigger one. The counselor raised its luminous limbs. Order. Slowly, the noise faded. Lady Giravel, the counselor said, state your proposal clearly. She nodded. The human Elias Ward will be formally integrated into House Thrix as a lineage warden. His presence will remain external yet constant. He will not control the future. He will protect its flexibility. All eyes turned to Elias.
Do you accept?
The counselor asked. Elias hesitated, not because he did not understand the importance, but because he did. If I say no, he asked, what happens to the child? The scientist answered softly. We cannot guarantee stability. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Humans were good at many things. Walking away from responsibility was not one of them. I accept, he said. The decision sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Within hours, other noble houses filed formal inquiries. Could humans be trained? Was this effect unique? Could lineage wardens be shared, regulated, controlled? That last question made Lady Giravel's markings flare sharply. Humans cannot be controlled, she said flatly. That is the point. Elias's life changed overnight. He was given access to chambers no human had entered before. He attended lineage sessions where futures were discussed like architecture plans. He did not speak often. When he did, it was usually to ask simple questions. What if that doesn't work? What happens if conditions change? What if the child chooses differently? Those questions made nobles uncomfortable. They always had. As the emergence approached, the unborn child's signals grew stronger. Patterns formed, not fixed, but responsive. When Elias was present, the systems remained calm. When he left, fluctuations increased. The conclusion was unavoidable. Lady Giravel visited Elias privately one final time before the ceremony. I once accused you in public, she said. I believed you had damaged my house. And now? Elias asked. She looked away toward the stars. Now I believe you saved it. He smiled gently.
Humans have a habit of showing up where they're not expected. The ceremony was quiet, no celebration.
No spectacle. Just law being rewritten in real time. When it ended, the counselor spoke words that would echo through history. From this moment forward, humanity is recognized not as a variable to be removed, but as a force to be included. Elias felt the weight of that sentence settle into him. Somewhere beyond the walls of the station, a child prepared to enter a future that could not be predicted. And for the first time in galactic history, that future was not feared. It was allowed. Only one part remained. Time did not slow for history. It never did. While councils debated and laws changed, the child grew closer to emergence. The galaxy watched quietly, as if afraid that speaking too loudly might disturb something fragile. Elias Ward spent most of his days near the lineage chamber now. He was no longer escorted. No guards followed him. He was trusted, not because he had proven loyalty, but because nothing functioned properly without him. That fact made many beings uneasy. The chamber itself was a marvel. Layers of transparent energy surrounded the developing child, each layer once meant to control a specific future outcome. Now, many of those layers had been loosened or removed entirely, not destroyed, simply allowed to move. Scientists observed from a distance, recording everything. For the first time in their careers, they were not trying to predict what would happen next. They were trying to understand what was happening now. Lady Giravel stood beside Elias, her posture straight, her expression calm. She had changed more than she realized. Her markings glowed less often now, no longer reacting to every unexpected result. You have altered my people, she said quietly. Elias shook his head. No, you did that yourself. I just stood here. She gave a small, unfamiliar smile. That may be the most human answer you could give. As the moment approached, signals from the chamber shifted. Not alarms, not warnings. Invitations. The systems adjusted themselves without instruction, opening paths that had never existed. The child is ready, a scientist said, awe clear in their voice. Across the station, notifications spread. Observers gathered. Representatives from dozens of species tuned in. This was no longer a private matter. This was a turning point. Elias felt something strange then. Not fear, not excitement, responsibility. Humans had crossed many lines in their history. Most of them accidentally. This time, he knew exactly where he stood. The chamber light softened, the final barriers faded, and the child emerged into the world. There was no explosion of energy, no dramatic display, just a quiet shift like the universe exhaling. Sensors flooded with data. Patterns formed and dissolved. The child's mind began interacting with its surroundings immediately, not following predefined responses, but choosing from them. One scientist whispered, "It is observing possibilities." Another corrected softly, "No, it is selecting them." Lady Geravel stepped forward, her voice unsteady for the first time in her life. "My grandchild." The child turned toward her, toward Elias, toward everything. The systems did not collapse. They adapted. A ripple spread outward, not as chaos, but as adjustment. Other predictive systems across the station recalibrated, responding to a future that was no longer fixed, not broken, flexible. The council convened one final time. "The emergence is stable," the counselor announced. "More than stable." "It is resilient," a delegate asked the question many had been avoiding. "What does this mean for the galaxy?" The counselor paused. "It means the future can no longer be owned." Silence followed. Lady Geravel spoke next. "My people believed perfection was control. We were wrong." She looked directly at Elias. "Perfection is survival." That statement spread faster than any law. In the months that followed, change moved through the galaxy like a quiet tide. Noble houses revised their lineage systems. Some resisted. Others embraced the shift. A few collapsed under their own rigidity. Humans were invited, not demanded, to participate, not as rulers, not as saviors, as companions to uncertainty. Elias declined most offers. He remained with House Thrix, guiding not with orders, but with questions. What if? What else? What happens if this fails? The child grew quickly, not physically, but mentally. They asked questions no one had prepared for. They understood systems without being trapped by them. Lady Geravel watched and learned. One evening she stood beside Elias on a balcony overlooking the stars. "My grandchild will never fit into our old future," she said. Elias nodded. "Neither did we." She turned to him. "Humanity terrifies this galaxy." He smiled gently. "That's fair. We terrify ourselves, too." She considered that. "And yet we need you." "Yes," Elias said. "But not because we're special. Because we're used to living without guarantees." The official record would later mark this era as the end of perfect prediction. But among common beings, a different story spread. They spoke of humans as the species that walked into impossible systems and made them livable. Not by force, not by brilliance alone, by refusing to believe the future was finished. Years later, the child, now no longer a child, stood before the council. Their presence alone calmed the chamber. They did not demand change. They expected it. The galaxy listened, and far away, on a small human world spinning quietly around an unimportant star, nothing changed at all. Humans still argued, failed, adapted, and moved forward. They always had. The galaxy had finally learned the truth humans had known all along. The future was not something to be controlled. It was something to be survived. And humanity was very, very good at that. Developer mode ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.